that video did justice because I could not. But please welcome Miss Lara Logan. Miss Lara Logan is going to speak for a little bit. And then after, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A, so please start writing your questions down and we'll kind of walk around and pick them up. You are a huge part of this, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you so much, everybody. This is a warmer reception than the one I just had at the hospital meeting. In case you haven't heard it yet, I was escorted out by the police. About a minute and a half into the meeting, I'll be honest. So the pastor, some of you might know him, he's from the Lutheran Holy Ghost Church, stood up and gave the rules for the meeting. And the rules were that the community would sit and listen and be patronized and lectured, and that then they could write their questions down on paper, but that they would not be allowed to speak. It's not a debate. We're not here for a debate, he said. Wow. Okay, so that got me fired up. We are not here for a debate. Of course we are. It's the United States of America. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is not freedom. This is Marxism. That's what this is. It's Marxism. And it's disguised as a number of things. And what I want to do this evening, because we've had a great explanation from Tara about what CIS is. We've heard from Catalina, as a reminder, of the principles, right? Why we're here, what are we doing? Well, so what I want to do is to give you some tools, right? Because one of the things that I have learned over the years, the benefit of being a journalist like myself, is I get to go all over the world and learn from the best, right? So there is a very simple way to understand exactly where we are today that will connect all of the dots for you and will help you, will give you the tools to fight, but to really fight, right? And it's going to make, I think for me, when I learned about it, everything just kind of fell into place. And I understood what I was looking at. And this is what I want you to hear. We are in 5th generation warfare, which is a war of narratives. That's how it's defined, a war of narratives. So Catalina said, information is a powerful tool, or misinformation is a powerful tool. Actually, in 5th generation warfare, the narrative is the entire battlefield. It's not a tool, it is the war. It is the fight. That's why it's so important that they choose words such as an extremist minority. Now you have to prove that you're not a minority, don't you? Antifa, the anti-fascists, that's what they call themselves. Now we have to prove that they're not anti-fascists, they're fascists. They get to be fascists all day long. They don't believe in freedom of religion, they don't believe in freedom of thought, they don't believe in so on. You could go down the whole line. They don't believe in freedom of religion, they don't believe in any freedom actually. They believe that you have, in fact, if you don't believe what they believe, you go into an indoctrination camp, where anything can happen to you. If you want to look at the indoctrination camps in China, they take the women, and if they won't comply, they put them in a cell full of male prisoners, and they gang rape them into submission. Now, I was told by the principal of St. Mary's that I was not allowed, that if I wanted to talk to my kids about things like that at home, I was welcome. But we have to be developmentally appropriate in 6th grade or 5th grade, whatever my son was in at the time. They were teaching Marxism in his class. And I called him up and I said, Mr. Meehan, who I liked very much, by the way. I said, Mr. Meehan, do you know why are the children learning about Marxism? Like, why is my son learning about Marxism in this class? And he said, well, I don't really know what you mean. And I said, well, this is a Catholic school, right? And what was Marx's position on religion? He said, well, I'm not really familiar with that. You probably know a lot more about Marxism than I do, but it's one very simple, basic fact to know is that Marx didn't believe in God. And if you want to know, Catalina, why it's social media, I'll tell you why. Because Karl Marx was hired by Henry Rothschild, by the Rothschild family, to develop a system of social control. So when you see social, it is a form of control. That's all it is. Social media is a form of controlling us all in the media space. So what does fifth generation warfare really mean? That you're meant to believe the narrative regardless of the truth. So how often do we see that? The vaccine will end the pandemic. It's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Right? If you get the vaccine, you won't end up in hospital. You won't be as sick. Not as many of you will die. Wow. So, I think it was Tara referred to the health component of CIS. Well, they just added the COVID-19 vaccination to the immunization schedule for our children. So the narrative, right, has fallen apart. It's just crumbled before our eyes. And the truth has revealed itself that children don't need the vaccine. I mean, it's not even a vaccine, it's a defense countermeasure because it was developed by the Department of Defense. But why call it that? You know why it's important to stop calling it that? Because this is a war of narratives. And if you keep using their language, think of it as the enemy's language, you are helping the enemy. So every time you use their language, you're reinforcing their narrative. That's what it really means. That's why you have to change the language. That's why every single word matters. I don't say it's a defense countermeasure I didn't make that up. If you look at the research done by a woman called Sasha Latipova, and I know that you can get that from April Laird. Sasha Latipova, for years, her job was compliance, right? For pharmaceutical companies developing medical products. So she knew when she saw all the compliance measures for the so-called vaccines that they didn't follow any of the rules, nothing. So she started to look at it, and what did she find? She found the actual contracts between the Department of Defense and the pharmaceutical companies, and then she found the law. So what happened right after 9/11? Who remembers the next big terror threat? Anthrax. Remember that? Yeah. Suddenly, bioweapons. Oh my gosh, they're going to follow 9/11 with a bioweapon attack. I fell for it. Anyone else fall for it? No. I fell for it. I'll be honest with you, I did. I mean, I thought, oh great, now I've got anthrax to worry about. Well, there's a very smart man, I believe he's a flight surgeon. He's on active duty, so he's got to be very careful. But he studied these laws, and I interviewed him recently, and he said to me, you know, I counted how many times George Bush said terrorist and bioweapon in his next State of the Union speech after 9/11. And I don't remember exactly what he said, it was 29 or 36 or something outrageous like that. And then, you know what the next thing was that happened? They passed laws that took authority away from Health and Human Services in the event of a bioweapon attack, and they put it in the hands of the Department of Defense. And then they didn't do anything for another year or two. Then there was an amendment to the law, right? That's how they do it. And then there was another amendment later. And what did these amendments do? They expanded the scope of the law. And finally, what did they expand it to include? Infectious diseases. So that shows you that from George Bush onwards, all the way through to Biden, they were all involved. Every White House and every Congress. So I want to ask all of you to try, as much as you can, to take those distinctions of left and right and put them to one side, in a sense. Yes, there are differences between all of us, but when you use the language of left and right, you use the language of a false narrative. Because this is a war against all of our children. It's not a war against Republican or conservative children. It's a war against every single child. What they are doing, and I'm going to take a phrase from a very, very wise friend of mine who has been rescuing kids since the 1990s. And he said it to me about sexual violence, but it applies to everything. This is how you murder a child without killing them. That's what we're doing. They talk about all the transgender children. 300,000 kids identify as transgender. Do they really? No, they don't.
If you then look, you know the statistic they don't give you? What they do in the war of narratives, they give you one narrative. And it's not just that, it's not always filled with things that are false. Sometimes that narrative will have kernels of truth in it, but it's what they leave out. Because what they leave out is how many of that 300,000 go on to say, I no longer identify as transgender. But guess what? Some of them have been chemically castrated at age 10, 11. And they can never, ever live a normal life. That is how you murder a child without killing them. You teach children at their most vulnerable age. What will anyone in education, anyone in therapy, anyone will tell you? What is the most vulnerable period of time for our children? It's in middle school, isn't it? And isn't it so interesting that that's where so many of the statistics come from? Because in middle school, that's where kids are figuring out who they are. My kids have had friends right here in this town. I'm not a girl, I'm a boy now. Okay? And then one of them became a bug. Seriously. My daughter has a boyfriend, I said to my husband, so just want to let you know that Lola, our youngest, she has a boyfriend, and he said, thank God it's a boy. Lola said, how'd I go with that? I said, great. Okay. We make that joke, but even my children know. Let me tell you, kids are so incredibly astute, and they see what's going on. And my son, when they came up with cisgender, he said to me, Mom, they've come up with a new word. I said, what is that? He said, it's cisgender. I said, what does that mean? He says, well, it means that you're not the birth, the gender that you were born with. You're now cisgender. That refers to your birth gender. I said, oh. He said, yeah, they're doing that because they don't want you to remember how you were born. Don't want you to remember how you were born. I think my son was about 10 when he said that. And when he got that class on Marxism, he knew, because he heard it at home. He knew exactly what it was all about. So what he did was give them all the answers that they wanted. And then he wrote down all the questions. He wrote it all down, because you know what? They don't give them the papers to take home. They don't put those lessons in their books. They teach it to them in class, and then they do the test on Google Classroom, and it disappears each page, and it's gone. Because they don't want you to know. And we all know in our lives, you know from the day that you were born, you don't need anybody to tell you, when you gotta hide, it's wrong. We all know that. It's that simple. So you don't have to be an expert in childhood education. That's the whole point of being a parent. Right? I mean, you may not know how to be the best parent, but in the very, very heart of your soul, you know that your job is to fight for your child. And I don't know about the rest. I'm sure that every single week, I'm just like all of you. I'm just another mom in this town, trying to do the best that I can do, failing every day. Seriously, I think my children have shares in Whataburger at McDonald's. Don't hate. No, I know you're judging me, you are. It's true. Sometimes I say to them, look, they actually brought DoorDash to this town, you know that? I was like, can't you stop ordering from McDonald's? Don't we have other restaurants on DoorDash? How about Pasta Bella? Yeah, no, I didn't say, let me cook something for you. It's terrible, but honestly, April said to me, I know that you're so busy, please can you do this? And I said, of course, because this is where we change everything. We change it right here. And if you read, there's a book that you can all read, it's very short, and it's a quick, easy read. It was written by General Michael Flynn and an Army Sergeant Boone Cutter, and it's called A Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. And what you will see in there, Mike loves to say, he's an old friend of mine, and he loves to say, local action, national impact. So I'm trying to do what I can on the local level, and I also have responsibilities at a national level in trying to find a balance, with my family and everything else, and not succeeding very well because it's hard to find that kind of balance. But when you're getting calls from a prison cell, right, on the East Coast, and it's one of the January 6th prisoners. It's kind of hard sometimes when I say to him, you know, it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I don't want to do this right now because I'd like to spend some time with my kids, and I haven't had much of a weekend, I don't know, in years. And he, you know, he's been in solitary confinement for 15 months without a trial. Without a trial. And if you think because you didn't go to the Capitol on January 6th that you're going to be okay, no. If you think because you live in Fredericksburg, not Austin, you're going to be okay and your kids are going to be okay, no. That's what this is showing you, right? They will not stop. Now, critical race theory was exposed for what it was, what happened. The narrative crumbled. So they rebranded it, repackaged it, and they shoved another false narrative down your throats. And you know what? People are so afraid. How many people in this room are afraid? I'm afraid for my children. I'm afraid every day that they go to school because sometimes I know there are teachers who hate them and other parents who hate me. Actually, the teachers probably hate me, not my kids, right? I mean, thank goodness that there are great teachers who don't, of course, you know? But I know, Tara, you said it's hard. It is hard. It's hard to be an outlier. It's hard to be targeted. Actually, it can be kind of fun if you let go of the fear. I had a nice chat to the police officer escorting me out of the hospital. I was going to see if I could break him and have him crack a smile, but I failed. Didn't work. But I didn't get his name, which I've completely forgotten already because I'm at that age. But I want to tell you, you know what I saw at that hospital meeting? You know what I saw? Those people were going to sit up there, and it was, you know, Jane told me that there was someone from the rural state, you know, hospital association, and someone from the state hospital association, and they were going to tell everybody how this is, you know, this hospital is an anomaly, and you've got to fall in line with the rest of the state because it's going to go bankrupt, and you know, and so on and so on. And those people, I said to them, you know, I'll just go up there and ask them and tell them we want to change the agenda. You're not going to speak first. Because everyone was saying, well, they're going to speak for an hour and then we only get to write questions. And I said, on whose authority? On whose authority? And everyone said, no, it's all right. We'll just hear what they have to say. I lost it a minute and a half. That's how long I lost it. I couldn't stand it. Angel was there right by my side. She was like, let's go. She's like, great, we'll be on time for the next one. But what I saw was a bunch of guys in suits who were wealthy, you know, people who were going to sit up there and they were going to tell the community how it was. They were going to sit up there and say, for the last 3 years, your hospital's been losing money. And if we don't sell it now, it's going to, you know, you're going to lose it all. Really? Really? Okay, so I asked, and I was told, 3.5 million is what the community is given every year. And you were short how much? 15 to 16 million. Okay, but how much did you make in your operating costs, right? I don't know. But this is what I do know. How long have you been losing money? Because if you were always losing money, you wouldn't be here, right? So they said, oh, the last 3 years. I said, most of that was COVID. Oh, well, no, not all of it. It's like, well, 2 years of it. And then, yeah, but before that, the trends were not good. The trends were not good. So fix them. So fix them, because people come from all over the hill country to this hospital, right? And you know what happens in this community? People with means, they get the hell out of here. They go to Houston and San Antonio and other places, and they get the health care that they need. And who's left? Those who don't have means. My mother-in-law was forced to have remdesivir during COVID. If they show me a mask, I swear I'm going to carry a lighter and I'm going to set fire to every mask. But look at the masks. The masks are another false narrative, right? So if you think about it, how many times, like when they had the Summer of Love, and you were told that CNN reporter standing there, they're mostly peaceful protests, and they're burning to the ground behind you, right? So that is a perfect example. Don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe what you know to be true. People get so offended because I say, I'm sorry, but there are not 54 genders. I don't care if American Airlines gives you that many options when you check in. I don't care if Facebook gives you that many options for your profile. I don't care. There are 2 genders. I tell my kids, you die tomorrow, 100 years from now, they're gonna dig up your bones, they're gonna know you were a girl. That's how it works. That's how it works. So this is the thing. Who wins on defense? Nobody. In information warfare, you win on offense. When you set the tone and you set the narrative, you're already ahead. And now when people have to try to dismantle your false narrative, improve the truth, now you're behind the 8 ball again. And you just keep staying behind. Why? Because they have information dominance. Right? So how do they have information dominance? Because we give it to them. Because we use Facebook. And we use Instagram, and our kids use all these things. And we never teach our kids to be careful. We don't tell them that. We tell them, do your Google Classroom. Really? Because Google now owns a worldwide, unlimited, perpetual copyright to your child's education records. What else does Google track? Where you go when you use Google Maps. Everything you search on the internet. Right? And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. So if you really want to know how to win this fight, first, you have to recognize that we're in a war of narratives. And when you do that, you will see one false narrative after another. Ukraine, we have to help the poor people of Ukraine. I'm sorry, I don't want anyone to suffer in a war, but we don't have to send American soldiers and dollars, tax dollars. I'm not afraid to go to war. People ask me, are you going to go to Ukraine and cover that war? No, I'm not going. You know why? Because the people we're arming carry the swastika. That's why I'm not going. Not because I feel my heart breaks for the ordinary people in Ukraine who are caught between the warring sides. But I saw years ago them strapping people to telephone poles and taking their clothes off in the freezing cold and leaving them there for people to whip them, their naked bodies. I've seen them beating roaming gypsy women senseless on the streets there. I've seen them flying the flag of the swastika. If you look at it, what did they do? In 2013 and 14, the CIA sponsored a color revolution in Ukraine. You go back, you will see Obama in his public appearances talking about the right of the people of Ukraine to protest peacefully and how the United States supported that right. But if you went, which amazingly no journalist did, but if you went to Ukraine at that time and looked at what was happening on the streets, they were not protesting peacefully. They were killing people, and they were burning cities to the ground. And after that revolution, for the next few years, they massacred people in the tens of thousands across eastern Ukraine. The reason Crimeans want to secede and go to Russia is because of that, because there are mass graves all from Donbass to Odessa, Lugansk, all across that region, all put in the ground by the little puppet Zelensky and the other puppets of that government. Right? And that's just the reality. And I say it to you, I never want people to suffer. And in every war, ordinary people suffer. But the narrative that you were fed about that war is a false one. And it is being exposed. And Catalina is right. They are losing control. And the way that you know it is how many of those powerful narratives are failing. And what do they reveal? COVID reveals that the war is against every one of us. That virus doesn't pick and choose depending on your politics, right? It doesn't. That's why I say to you, left and right distinctions play into their hands. And you can still be loyal to the party and vote for your cause and believe that Republican position is better because of abortion and all that. You can still believe in that. But if you don't recognize that this is a war against humanity, then you are empowering your enemy. If you still turn to the New York Times if that's still your reference point, what you're doing is, it's like being in the Battle of Normandy, or on the beaches of Normandy or Dunkirk, and going on your knees every day and crawling over to the Nazi lines and asking them to please write nice things about your side in the paper, in German propaganda. That's what you're doing. And I'm not even saying it just as a metaphor. If you actually dig, you'll be shocked to find that there are a lot of Nazis in our government. The head of Nazi intelligence helped to set up the CIA. Chief scientist at NASA was a Nazi. My husband's great aunt Margaret, some people in this room may even remember great aunt Margaret, because she used to sit outside the drugstore on Main Street and watch everything, and she knew everything that happened in this town every day. She was hired to be the liaison to the Nazi scientists at NASA because she spoke German. In this town. This is not ancient history. This is living history. It's living history, and they have kept it from us. Can you imagine at the end of the Second World War, when we were still discovering the concentration camps? Remember Eisenhower and MacArthur? They had to open up the camps and bring journalists in because the United States government was not going to show anyone what really happened there. They were hiding the truth. Why? Why would you hide the truth? Oh, because people can't handle it. That's what you hear all the time. People can't handle it. They can't really know what's going on. I have never encountered people that didn't and weren't able to handle the truth. It might take you a little while. It might be difficult, but every single one of us can do it. I mean, for goodness sake, when my doctor told me at age 41 that I had cancer, it wasn't easy. Felt like I was falling out of a building, spinning through the air, and hitting the building, and as I was hitting it, pieces of me were just flying in every direction. I panicked. I never knew what panic meant. I never knew what it was like. I discovered I didn't know anything about cancer. And I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old at home. Right? But I figured it out. And that's what we'll do. But you don't have a group of people that get to sit there and decide for the rest of us what we can and can't handle. That's what happened across town tonight. We're going to give you the figures and the information, but we know best. Right? That's what Trump was about. It's what people still don't understand. Is people said, I am tired of all the people that tell me that they know better than me. I want a guy who doesn't do that. I want someone who doesn't belong to you. And when they say drain the swamp in Washington, you know they're literally talking about draining the swamp. Because they created a federal district out of nothing, right? Out of a swamp. They drained it and they created that. And that federal district is the instrument of control here. That CIS, all of that goes back to federal power. Anything that is centralized is a form of control. So when they tell you that you can put all of your devices on one platform, what is that doing? It's making it easier for them to control you. Because they can go into one portal and they can take everything. So your smart, dishwasher, your smart fridge, your smart this, your smart that. No, substitute smart for control. It's making you dumber and it's making them smarter because they know more about you. And the goal here is to know more about you. I think it should be obvious to everyone at this point that the days when you could say, I'm not doing anything wrong, therefore I don't have anything to fear. I'm sorry, dear, you shower too many times a week, okay? And you, young lady, your showers are too hot. Using too much electricity, stealing water from the planet. Let's go down the line, right? This is what you voted for the wrong people. You go to church, bad girl, right? That's what we're talking about. And all of it is creating a human terrain map for each and every single person, which is a guide to what your weaknesses and your strengths are and how you can be controlled. They're rooting out the rebels and the terrorists. By the way, welcome, fellow domestic terrorists. But I want you to realize that when something like that happens, you have a letter from Merrick Garland, right? That wants to the FBI, and he wants everyone to look at the parents, and they put that out, and the reaction to it is bad. Don't make the mistake of thinking that they didn't mean it. That is an information operation. What they are doing is called shaping, where they shape the information environment. They're preparing you and conditioning you for the reality that they are implementing. Remember when Hillary Clinton gave the basket of deplorable speech in 2016? And then they said, oh, she went too far. Really? Because look at the policy that was implemented after that. It was to target every single person on the political opposition as exactly that basket of deplorables, right? We still live with those labels today. In fact, everybody in this room fits into that basket, according to them. Another false narrative that we now have to try to disprove. I think it's a waste of time to try to disprove those narratives. I think if you concentrate, like people say to me, I had a guy today, I don't think many of you realize that Ericsson, Swedish company, controls our emergency services lines. So when you dial 911, you call, Ericsson owns that, right? Well, Ericsson also has admitted in civil court that they gave the locations of US soldiers to terrorists on the battlefield in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan so that they could kill US soldiers. They've admitted that in court and they paid settlements in those cases. They lost those cases, right? They're on the record. So why don't we know about this? Why is our government okay with that? Why are we still using Ericsson? 167 years old, that company. Older than most countries. Isn't that odd? It's a little odd, right? So Ericsson owns all of our emergency data. Isn't it interesting that on January 6th, no one could make a 911 call? What did that do? It kept the capital isolated and controlled. You couldn't have emergency personnel and first responders and other police services come in there, could you? You know, another time the 911 calls weren't working? In Las Vegas. At the Country Music Concert Massacre at Mandalay Bay. Wouldn't that be worth looking into? You'd think journalists would be curious about that, wouldn't you? You'd think our government would be curious about that. No, because they don't want the truth to get in the way of any of those false narratives. And what they have to do, the January 6th Commission, that is how you prop up the false narrative, right? They need that commission because everything is a lie, right? Trump didn't plan some insurrection. That's not even an insurrection. So what do we have to do? We have to keep telling more lies. We have to build legs to keep up those lies. And as they crumble, we have to build more. And as they crumble, we build more, and we build more, and we build more. But what all the lies that are crumbling around us tell us is not only does the truth prevail, but they're losing control of those narratives. Because they do not want to be held accountable for any of it. The fact that we can know as much as we know about these defense countermeasures and how harmful they can be to children, and how children are not, most children, 99.9% of kids are not at risk from COVID. So why would you put that in the immunization schedule for children in this country? Why? Why would you do that? There's a lot of different answers to those questions, right? And I can't give definitive answers. And when you hear people give you definitive answers without telling you how they know it, don't believe them. There is a category here. Here's another tool for you. Start to recognize the unknowable. So when they tell you in Benghazi, it wouldn't have made any difference if we'd done this and if we'd done that. We could have sent jets, wouldn't have mattered. We could have dropped bombs, wouldn't have mattered. We could have used, low flies to scare people, wouldn't have made any difference. How do you know, General? That's right. You don't know because you never did it. You can say, in my professional opinion, I don't believe it would have made a difference, but you cannot state definitively that it would not have. And what you hear every night you turn on the TV is you hear them stating definitively things that they couldn't know. What was in Trump's head the night that they won the election? Oh, he didn't think he was going to win. How do you know? How do you know? Did you talk to him? Oh no, that's right, you didn't. You spoke to some people in the White House, you spoke to some other people, you spoke to some other people, right? Because that became their frame of reference. So, another tool that you can recognize in information warfare is anticipate what they're going to say about you and counter it ahead of time. So sometimes I will say, I know I'm going to be attacked for saying this. And then what happens is when they attack me, they prove me right. So you want to say, for example, they're going to tell you that we're a minority, but here's a petition signed by people all over this town. In fact, the neighboring towns, we have people calling from all over. Look how many signatures are on here. They want you to believe we're a minority because if you find out that most people think the way we do, you'll realize that they're lying and that they've lost. It's so important why Catalina referred to this. Why is it so important for us to give up hope? Because if we give up hope, if we don't think we can win, then they win. You're not even in the fight. If you surrender, you're not even in the fight. And surrender is the only form of victory that has to be given. Can't be taken, can it? I mean, I'm not going to surrender. I mean, even if they throw me in a prison and execute me, till my last breath, I'm going to be fighting. Right? I know that I've been talking a while and it's time for me to wrap up, so I want to leave you with this. The fire that the pastor saw, I know what it is. I knew the moment he said it. It's urgency.
Yes, it is.
When I just saw General Michael Flynn the week before last, he said to me, opening words, we've got maybe 18 months before we lose this country. Maybe 18 months before we lose this country. Right? This is not something that you can pick and choose about whether you want to do. I can't remember the last time I paid any attention to what they say about me online. I really don't care because I realize I don't have time. I don't have time. You know what I'm worried about? I'm worried about that if Noah's Ark shows up, I'm going to be on board and my children are going to be on the dock waving me goodbye, right? That's what I worry about. Have I been good? You know, do they know enough about God? Did I bring them close enough to God? That they even have a chance of surviving this. That's what I worry about. That's where I failed because we have become, in many respects, a godless world. We mutter quietly to ourselves. You know, nobody wants to have someone else's belief shoved down their throat, least of all me, I get it. And so I'm not advocating for that as the answer. But this is a moment, and it comes down to this. Lorraine, hello. She knows this. When you stand before God, and He says, once you knew, what did you do?
I've done what you told me to do, Lord. And do thou it.
And did you do it with everything you had? Did you fight with everything that you had? You know, and it's hard on my children. I'll be honest with you, it is. It's hard on my children. It's hard on me. I woke up on one Sunday morning and I looked at God and I was like, oh my gosh. Most of my family might die because they all took the vaccine. And I phoned home. No, I didn't phone home. I got in the shower because I was working, filming. And I looked at my phone as I got in the shower. And I had a note from my sister. My sister-in-law had died. Suddenly. Now, she had an autoimmune condition, and so no one in the family will talk about vaccines. Right? No one will talk about it. And it's hard. If you've been vaccinated, you know, and I'm sure there are people in this room who have. So as I said to a doctor just the other day, you can't say to people, oh, you've been vaccinated, you're going to die, there's nothing you can do about it, and expect them to embrace that. You've got to do more than that. You've got to start talking about what you can do to mitigate it. I mean, fighting for a healthy immune system, that's just what we should all do, whether we've been vaccinated or not. And there are ways to mitigate these things, but you can't hide from the truth. Hiding from the truth is not going to get us anywhere. It's not. Believing that we don't have critical race theory in the schools and that Texas is safe and it's an island, that is a false narrative. It is a false one and it is a dangerous one. So there's a couple things that you can read and watch if you really want a better understanding. There's a documentary called Take Back Your Power. You will be shocked. I was shocked. It's beautifully done. It's easy to watch. And what it shows you is that smart meter that Fredericksburg Electric put on all of our homes is emitting a radiation signal every few seconds. They'll tell you it's so tiny it doesn't affect you, but collectively over time, it does affect you. And you can have it taken off, but you gotta pay an extra $65 a month or something just to not have it. Who gave them the right to put it on? We've got to start asking these questions about who gave you the right to do that. And part of that is knowing and understanding your rights. You don't have to go along with it. I saw a whole bunch of people going along with an agenda they didn't agree with tonight at the hospital meeting. A whole bunch of people. Why? You're all so angry and fired up that you've gone to this meeting. So what are you going to do about it? If you had a petition, you'd be able to have names, numbers, addresses of people who are interested and committed enough to be part of your cause. It doesn't have to just be the people who can make it to the meeting. It can be the whole community. And you can find people in other communities as well. So I would urge you to watch Take Back Your Power. If you haven't watched Mike Smith's film Out of Shadows, I would urge you to watch Out of Shadows. Mike Smith is a very good friend of mine. And he did a very beautiful film about, he was a stuntman in Hollywood, one of the best. He's been James Bond, he's been Batman, all of that. And his back was broken in a stunt accident, and he had an experience with God, and he opened his eyes to what was around him, and he realized he was literally surrounded by Satanism, and he hadn't seen it, he'd been blind to it. His best friend had 7 human skulls on a shelf in his office, and he never said, where'd they come from? Whose skulls are they? So the next time you read in somewhere or hear on one of your shows or something that the secret to everlasting youth is young blood, why don't you ask whose blood? How young? How much? Is it a baby's blood? How much of a baby's blood do you need? Whose baby? What happened to that baby? How do you get the blood? You know, it's not the hard questions. It's the simple questions, because the devil is always in the details. Always in the details. I do just want to say to you, I appreciate the fact that all of you are willing to give up your time and to be part of this. It is, it's amazing that in a conservative town in the Texas countryside, you're a minority. That's amazing. I've learned from Tara that what is going into our schools is not just pornography. These books are teaching everyone that every white boy they meet is a rapist. And I have a son who's the nicest person in our house, and I'm not going to allow anyone to do that to him. You know? I'm not. And I want you to think about what they're doing to these children when you understand how many kids change their minds. Abigail Schreier, S-C-H-R-I-E-R, Abigail Schreier. If you read her book, it was banned on Amazon because years ago she did all this research and she found that 80% of kids with gender dysphoria change their minds. They go from middle school to high school and they're fine being who they are. That's what happens. They lose their baby fat. They get, the girls get a little waist. Then they start liking being a little sexy, and they're like, hell, I like being a girl. Forget about that boy stuff. And you know what? Some of them don't. And that's okay. Nobody wants any child to commit suicide because they don't know who they are or because they don't fit into their own skin. But it doesn't mean that we have to erase women and mutilate children. Because if you really cared about transgender children, you would know all their stories, wouldn't you? You'd know the stories of all the kids who don't identify and it's too late. There was one boy, and they take skin from your forearm to create a fake, penis. It doesn't work, and the surgeries don't work, and you're now a slave to the medical community for the rest of your life, and it's miserable. It's absolute. You condemn these children to a life of abject misery. And And it's hard. I mean, how many of you in here watch Libs of TikTok? If you go on Twitter, and I took myself off Twitter because they traffic kids on there, and then Elon Musk took down a lot of those trafficking handles, so I'm back there. But if you ever go on Twitter, if you search Libs, L-I-B-S, of TikTok, and you can find the woman who runs Libs of TikTok, you can find her on Substack as well. That's an app that you can get. And on Substack, she writes about what she finds. And all she does is take their videos from TikTok. And it's funny because she gets attacked and accused of attacking people. She was accused by AOC in testimony on the Hill of attacking Boston Children's Hospital. But she showed a video that Boston Children's Hospital put out. That's all she did. She used their words. In a war of narratives, their words are very powerful in making your case. And that's what you did. You did that by going and finding that slide that woman gave. I gotta hide my instinct because I just want to rip her face off. You know what I mean? I really gotta get that under control. This is Satan, African in me, with a little bit of Texas.
Thank you for being so patient.